The Fred Wolf cartoon and the Playmates toy line were famous for their inconsistencies in adaptation. This sometimes led to some head-scratching moments, with some characters changing from heroes to villains for no reason. But other times, this chaos led to the creation of some of the franchise's most iconic and beloved characters. Join me today as I explore the creative madness behind the original Muckman and Joe Eyeball. Back in June of 1989, during the rise of Turtle Mania, the Turtles were working like a well-oiled machine. But this was just an illusion. In reality, it was more like creative jazz. A bunch of very talented people playing off each other's ideas, without always checking if they were in the same key. Muckman and Joe Eyeball are the perfect examples of that beautiful chaos working out. As far as I can tell, Muckman started his life as a concept design by Dave Arshawsky from Anaglyph Studios. Dave, who was known for designing some of the weirdest characters and accessories, also created Muckman's buddy, Joe Eyeball, who he named after his brother Joe. In this concept, Joe Eyeball had 3 eyes, with a third one being at the end of his tail. The design was then sent to Varner Studios, where it was sculpted by Alec McTurk. At some point along this production chain, the character bio came together. Probably at Playmates, though it's hard to say for sure. According to his character bio, Muckman was a sewer worker who got mutated and turned into garbage. After that, he decided to roam the sewers, searching for morsels of muck, sludge, and slime. His buddy, Joe Eyeball, was a parasite who decomposed his way through the sewer pipes and helped him see in the dark. The clothespin on his nose wasn't there to keep the smell out, but to keep the garbage in. You may ask yourself, how could this work? Well, the figure had a surprisingly advanced play feature. You could buy retro mutagen ooze, pour it through a removable skull cap or a muck pack on his back, and watch it drip through his mouth or stomach. It didn't need this gimmick to be cool, but if you saw it in action, it was pretty spectacular. The figure came out in 1990. The same year as Mutagen Man, 2 characters that were clearly inspired by the Toxic Avenger, though Mutagen Man's similarities came from the cartoon. Then again, that is an interesting choice, considering that Toxie, the Toxic Avenger, was about to star in a new cartoon titled The Toxic Crusaders, another joint effort between Fred Wolf and Playmates that also involved Dave Arshawsky and Alec McTurk. In fact, the end credits of that show had many familiar names from the Tmnt cartoon. Since the Toxic Crusaders toy line was already in development in 1989, that crossover of talent likely helped everyone interpret the Muckman design with the same general vibe, even if they weren't in direct communication. The figure was also one of the few characters in the line that weren't allies or villains. Something that kids all around the world probably also had to make sense of during their playtime, undoubtedly creating millions of stories that had Muckman and Eyeball in many different roles. And they had time to do so because Muckman only showed up in the cartoon once in 1991, adapted by Francis Moss and Ted Peterson. Since the designs had to be simplified for animation, the 2 characters lost the details that made them so iconic. One interesting change was that Joe no longer had a third eyeball in his tail. While the character card shows Joe as a 3-eyed being, the actual figure was unpainted, and the details may have slipped through unnoticed. Muckman was played by Townsend Coleman, and Joe Eyeball was played by Rob Paulson. The 2 actors played the duo, making an impression of Jackie Gleason and Art Carney's characters from The Honeymooners. Ironically, Ed Norton, Art Carney's character, was a sewer worker in the sitcom, but in the toy, it was Muckman who was a sewer worker, and Joe wasn't even a human. And to make things more chaotic, neither were sewer workers in the cartoon. The characters were given proper names in the episode Muckman Messes Up: Garson Grunge and Joe Junquet. The duo was analyzing garbage when they were bathed by a mysterious substance that mutated them. But this wasn't the regular ooze. The ooze was an experimental substance that Tropotron Labs was working on, named Compound X7. Shredder, Bebop, and Rocksteady were after this chemical because, according to Krang, it had the potential to turn the turtles back into pets. When they failed to find it, Bebop and Rocksteady started destroying the place and unknowingly threw the compound out the window and onto Garson and Joe. Alerted by April, the Turtles responded to the alarm at Tropotron Labs and then were forced outside after the Shredder threw a smoke bomb at them. During their escape, the Turtles were caught on camera and the break-in was blamed on them. After watching the footage of the Turtles on the spot, Garson and Joe assumed they were the ones who mutated them and decided to get revenge. To do this, they rebranded themselves as Muckman and Joe Eyeball. But Muckman and his buddy were also caught on camera, terrorizing the neighborhood. Krang figured out quickly that these were new kinds of mutations and that they could be useful to them. April and Irma, knowing that the Turtles were innocent, decided to hit the streets to investigate the case. After finding an abandoned garbage truck, they were ambushed by the two new mutants. April alerted the Turtles, who later appeared on the scene completely crippled by pain caused by Muckman's ooze. Muckman had become their kryptonite. Interestingly, this only affected the Turtles. When Shredder tracked down Muckman, Bebop and Rocksteady seemed unaffected by his presence. Shredder convinced Muckman that the Turtles had also mutated Bebop and Rocksteady, and the two had made an alliance to set up a trap for the Turtles using April's TurtleCom. At the lair, Donatello figured out that it was the goo coming out of Muckman that made them weak, so he decided to go back to Tropotron Labs to find a sample and create an antidote. The rest of the Turtles, with Splinter, would track April's TurtleCom and rescue her and Irma. But they all ended up in the same place, and after seeing Muckman's effect on them, Shredder realized things were finally going his way. Shredder convinced Splinter to get captured to save the Turtles, and they took him back to the Technodrome. Honoring his promise, he left the Turtles to Muckman. Irma, taking advantage of Joe's infatuation with her, convinced them to give April a chance to prove the Turtles' innocence. After showing them the security tapes, Muckman and Joe joined the Turtles in the lair, where Donatello figured out an antidote.
Hey, Irma, wait! I'd kind of like you to have this, to remember me by.
Ew! What is it?
I don't know.
The Turtles used a portal to jump right into the Technodrome in the Arctic. They rescued Splinter, defeated the villains, and returned home just in time before the portal generator exploded. After the fight, Irma invited them for a pizza party at her apartment. Donatello promised Muckman to work on a way to reverse their mutation, but Muckman asked him to take his time. After all, they were enjoying being mutant heroes. After finding some spoiled food in Irma's fridge, Muckman and Joe jumped in to eat dessert. And that was the only appearance of Muckman and Joe Eyeball. The duo appeared again in the fan-made game Tmnt Rescue Palooza in 2019, and officially in 2020 in Mutant Madness. In 2021 and 2022, Muckman and Joe Eyeball received some extra love from Super 7 and NECA. Super 7 modernized the original action figure, with both regular and glow-in-the-dark versions. NECA adapted the cartoon version into action figure form, in both a regular and a glow-in-the-dark release. And yes, the character was also adapted into the 2012 universe, where he was given even more references to the Toxic Avenger. But that's a story for another video. It's interesting to see how different artists shaped Muckman in the same vibe without talking to each other. This is a testament to the creative freedom of like-minded artists. Of course, the fact that the character seemed inspired by Toxie probably helped a lot. In fact, the plot of the Toxic Avenger sequel included a substance that could completely undo Toxie. This plot element could have inspired his unexpected cartoon ability to weaken the Turtles. In fact, Compound X7 was described pretty much in the same way as the anti-traumatons from the movie. Of course, while there is an overlap between the two properties, the Toxic Avenger was never meant for kids, barely even for adults. But Playmates and Fred Wolf were already working on the Toxic Crusaders, which was definitely made for kids. Did you have this action figure or his Super 7 revision? Did you use ooze on him? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. See you in the sewers.